I never thought my own daughter would become my enemy. That sounds dramatic, maybe even paranoid, but I swear to you, the cracks were there long before the house collapsed. My name is Samuel Price. Most people in town just call me Sam. For 30 years I wore a badge on my chest, carrying the weight of other people's sins, chasing down thieves and liars, putting away men who thought they could outsmart the law. And for just as long, I carried the weight of my family, too. My wife, Claire, was the glue that held us together. She had this way of softening the sharp edges of life. She laughed easy, loved hard, and always reminded me that under the uniform and the steel, I was still just a man, her man, and our daughter's father. And then, 3 winters ago, she was gone. Cancer. The kind that sneaks in like a thief and robs you blind while you're still fumbling for the lights. One moment she was whole, the next she was a husk of the woman I loved, and when she slipped away, she took the warmth of our home with her. That left just me and Anna, my girl, my only child. She was 21 then, smart, beautiful, with her mother's fire in her eyes and my stubborn streak in her veins. I believed that grief would pull us closer, that we'd hold on to each other to survive the storm. But grief doesn't always bond. Sometimes it burns bridges. Anna didn't cry at the funeral. She didn't cling to me. She just stared at the ground, jaw tight, as if she were already blaming me for putting her in that black dress. I tried to reach her. God knows I tried. We'd sit at the kitchen table, 2 plates of untouched food between us, and I'd say things like, "Your mom wouldn't want us to drift apart. We need each other now more than ever. She'd want you to remember how strong you are." But Anna would just push her plate away, stand up, and leave. Sometimes she'd mutter, "You don't know what she'd want." Other times she'd whisper, "You let her die." Those words cut deeper than any knife I'd ever faced on the streets. I wanted to tell her that I'd fought too, that I'd prayed every night, begged doctors for miracles, taken every shift I could to pay for treatment. But none of that mattered. In her eyes, I hadn't been enough. The daughter who used to run to me when she scraped her knee now looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, an enemy. And that was only the beginning. She started staying out late. At first, I thought it was just grief, her way of escaping the silence of the house. But soon, nights bled into mornings. I'd wake up and find her room empty, her bed untouched. When I asked, she snapped. "Stop treating me like a child, Dad. When are you going to let me live my life? You don't get to control me anymore." Control. That was her word, not mine. But I knew what it meant. It meant she'd found someone else filling her ear. I started noticing changes, the way she dressed, sharper, bolder, clothes that didn't belong to the girl I raised, the way she spoke, colder, meaner, with venom she never used to have. And the phone calls, always hushed, always ending abruptly when I walked into the room. One night, I stayed awake, waiting. When she slipped through the door at 2 a.m., I asked, "Where have you been?" Her eyes narrowed. "Out?" "With who?" "That's none of your business." I stood, my voice rising. "I'm your father. Everything about you is my business." She scoffed, a sound so dripping with disdain it made my stomach turn. "You're not my father. Not really. You're just a man who failed Mom." And then she slammed her bedroom door, leaving me with those words echoing in my chest like gunshots.
The day I realized I'd lost her completely was the day she introduced me to him, Derek. Tall, smooth-talking, dressed in expensive clothes that didn't match the rust of our town. He had the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all, more like a mask he wore until he didn't need it anymore. "Dad," Anna said flatly, dragging him into the living room like a prize she wanted to show off. "This is Derek, my fiancé." "Since when?" "Since it became my choice," she snapped. I looked at Derek. His eyes slid over me like I was furniture. He didn't extend a hand, didn't nod. He just smirked, like he'd already won something. And maybe he had. Because from that moment on, Anna wasn't just drifting away. She was being pulled. Pulled by him. She stopped coming home altogether, moving into some slick apartment Derek paid for. She stopped answering my calls, and when I showed up one night, desperate just to talk to her, Derek met me at the door. "She doesn't need you anymore, old man," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "Why don't you crawl back into whatever hole you came from?" I clenched my fists. My blood boiled. But Anna's voice rang out from behind him. "Dad, just go." Her tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was cold, dismissive, like I was nothing. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've watched from a distance as my daughter became someone I didn't recognize. Lavish parties, designer clothes, a lifestyle paid for by a man whose money smelled of crime. The whispers around town confirmed it. Derek wasn't just some slick businessman. He was a dealer, a hustler, the kind of man I used to put behind bars. And my daughter, my Anna, was his partner. Every time I saw her in the papers, draped on his arm, smiling that hollow smile, it felt like losing her all over again. I told myself I could still bring her back, that maybe, someday, she'd wake up and realize who she was. But that hope died the night I found her on my porch, unannounced, for the first time in years. She didn't hug me. She didn't smile. She just looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're in our way." She stood on my porch like a stranger. My little girl, the same one who used to curl into my lap during thunderstorms, now stared at me with eyes that carried none of the warmth I remembered. The porch light flickered above her, illuminating every hard angle in her face, the contempt carved into her expression. "You're in our way." The words echoed in my ears, bouncing against the walls of memory. I swallowed hard. "What the hell are you talking about, Anna?" Behind her, Derek stepped forward. He didn't even look at me. He just lit a cigarette, exhaled a stream of smoke, and smirked like he owned the night. "She means," Derek said lazily, "that this house, this property, this relic of a man holding on to the past, is standing where progress needs to happen. Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Anna nodded. "We've got plans, Dad, big plans. And this," she gestured at my home, the house I'd built with my own hands, where I'd raised her with her mother, "is holding us back." I clenched my fists so tight my knuckles cracked. "This is your mother's house. This is where you grew up. And you're telling me you want to tear it down?" Her face didn't even flinch. "It's just wood and nails. She's gone. You need to move on." I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "Don't you dare use your mother to justify this." Derek blew another stream of smoke, chuckling. "You see? He doesn't get it. He's still living in the past, clinging to memories, pretending any of this matters." I turned on him. And you're poisoning her, filling her head with enough, Anna snapped. Her voice cracked like a whip, and for the first time I realized she wasn't just repeating Derek's words. She believed them. I'm not a little girl anymore. I don't need your lectures. I don't need your approval. And I sure as hell don't need this old house weighing me down. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear the cicadas buzzing in the distance, the faint hum of Derek's car idling at the curb. Finally, I said, "You want to sell this house? You're going to have to bury me in it first." Her eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I saw something there. Not anger, not frustration, but calculation. Like she was already thinking about how to make that happen. A week later, I found out what she meant. It was a Thursday. I'd been at the diner downtown, nursing a cup of black coffee and pretending I could still stomach the small talk of folks who pitied me. When I came home, the lock on my front door was broken. I rushed inside, heart pounding, only to find drawers yanked open, cabinets emptied, photo frames smashed on the floor. My house, my sanctuary, had been ransacked. I stumbled into the living room, and that's when I saw it. The lockbox I kept under the floorboards, the one with the money I'd saved from my pension, the one thing I was holding on to for the future. Gone. I dropped to my knees, ripping up the boards, clawing at the empty space where years of sweat and sacrifice used to sit. Gone. Every dollar, every ounce of security. Gone. And taped to the wall, just above the broken box, was a note, scrawled in Anna's handwriting. "Don't worry, Dad. We'll put it to better use." My vision blurred. My hand shook. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, she hadn't just walked away. She hadn't just rejected me. She had robbed me blind. I went to the police. Of course I did. Old habits die hard. But when I sat in that station, the same one where I'd spent 30 years of my life, I realized just how alone I was. The chief, a kid I'd once trained, shook his head. "Sam, it's your daughter. You sure you want to go down this road?" "She stole from me," I growled. "That money was my life." He sighed. "Look, I'll file the report, but off the record, you don't want this fight. She's not just your daughter anymore. She's tied up with Derek, and you know damn well what that means." I leaned across the desk. Then maybe it's time Derek learned what it means to cross me. The chief didn't say anything. He just looked at me with that mixture of pity and fear, because he knew what I was capable of. And so did I. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and simmering rage. I'd see Anna and Derek in town sometimes, rolling up in that shiny black car of his, dripping with money that wasn't clean. They'd laugh, sneer, flaunt themselves like royalty while the rest of us scraped by. And every time I saw her draped on his arm, smiling that empty smile, it was like a dagger in my chest. I tried once more to reach her. Cornered her outside a club, catching her just as she stumbled into the night air, reeking of booze and perfume. "Anna," I pleaded, grabbing her arm, "we need to talk." She yanked free, glaring. "Don't touch me." "Please," I begged. "Whatever Derek's feeding you, it's poison. You're not this person. You're better than this." Her eyes flicked over me, cold and sharp. "You don't know me anymore. I know you're my daughter." She laughed then, a cruel, bitter laugh that didn't belong in her throat. "No, I'm his now." She pointed to Derek, who was leaning against his car, watching us like a predator enjoying the show. "And you? You're just a sad old man clinging to ghosts." The world tilted beneath me. My chest tightened, and before I could say another word, she walked away, into his arms, like she'd never been mine. The attempt on my life came not long after. I was driving home one night, the road quiet, the moon hidden behind clouds. That's when I noticed the headlights in my rearview mirror. Bright, closer than they should have been. I slowed. They slowed. I sped up. They sped up. Then without warning, the car slammed into my bumper. My truck lurched forward, tires screeching. I gripped the wheel, heart hammering, as the other car rammed me again. Once, twice, over and over. They were trying to run me off the road. I swerved, fighting to keep control, but the gravel shoulder was loose, the ditch steep. The last hit sent me spinning. My truck careened off the road, meadow screaming, glass shattering. When I came to, the world was upside down. Blood dripped into my eyes, my chest burned. Through the haze, I saw the car that hit me, and as its headlights washed over the wreck, I saw the passenger side door open. Anna stepped out.
For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, hallucinating. But no, it was her, my daughter. She looked at me through the broken windshield. Her face was blank, empty. And then she turned, walked back to the car, got in, and left me there to die. But I didn't die. I dragged myself out of that wreck with broken ribs and blood in my lungs. I crawled through the dirt, choking, cursing, until I found help. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. But it wasn't a miracle. It was rage. Rage that burned hotter than the fire in my chest. Rage that carried me through the pain. Rage that kept me alive when my own daughter had tried to bury me. That was the night Samuel Price died. And something else was born. Not a cop. Not a father. Something darker. Something that would stop at nothing to make them pay. The man who walked out of the hospital wasn't the man who went in. I left the badge behind. I left the father behind. What came out was something sharpened, something honed by betrayal and pain. I wasn't just Samuel Price anymore. I was a storm waiting to break. The doctors patched me up, but they couldn't fix what was broken inside. My ribs ached with every breath. My body screamed at every step, but that pain only reminded me of what I had to do. Anna, my daughter, my blood. She'd stood there. She'd watched me bleed. She'd turned her back and walked away. There's no pain in the world like the pain of your own child choosing your death. And if she thought I was going to roll over and die in some ditch, she didn't know me at all. I started small, observation, watching, learning. Derek wasn't hard to track. Men like him never are. They flaunt themselves, strutting around like kings because they think the world belongs to them. His car, his clubs, his crew of muscle-headed thugs, they were all pieces on a chessboard, and I'd been playing chess my entire life. I followed him from a distance, keeping to the shadows. I saw the way he operated, how he laundered his money through strip clubs and casinos, how he moved drugs disguised in shipments of bottled liquor. And I saw Anna, always by his side. The first time I saw her laughing with him after the crash, it almost broke me. But then I looked closer. Her laugh was forced, her smile too stiff. I knew my daughter. Even when I didn't recognize her choices, I recognized her eyes, and those eyes were dead. She wasn't just with Derek. She was trapped by him. Maybe it started with love. Maybe she thought he was her way out of grief. But now
Now she was just another piece in his empire. And as much as I hated her for what she'd done, for what she'd allowed, I wasn't going to let Derek keep her. If she was going to be lost, it would be by her own hand, not his.
My first move was his money. I knew the system. I knew how to look where others didn't. I tracked his shell companies, the fake accounts he used to funnel cash. I started feeding information, anonymously, to the feds. Nothing that would spook 'em yet, just enough to get them circling. While he was busy putting out those fires, I lit another. One of his warehouses, the one they used to store incoming shipments, went up in flames. Nobody saw who did it. Nobody ever does when you've lived your whole life in shadows. But Derek knew. He knew someone was out there, pulling strings, setting traps, and he hated not knowing who. That was my edge. Of course, going after Derek's empire meant going after his men, and his men weren't saints. They were the kind of bottom feeders who thrived on intimidation, who thought a gun made them invincible. I proved them wrong. One by one, I picked them off. Not killed, not yet, but broken, beaten in alleys, left tied up for the cops to find. I made sure they carried a message back to Derek. The past never forgets. It was enough to make him paranoid, to make him lash out at his own men, to make him question where the threat was coming from. And all the while, I watched Anna. I saw the fear in her posture, the way she glanced over her shoulder when Derek wasn't looking. She knew too. Maybe not that it was me, but she knew the storm was coming. The first time we crossed paths again after the crash was almost poetic. It was raining, the streets slick with oil. Derek's car pulled up outside a club, headlights cutting through the downpour. His men flanked him, Anna on his arm. I stood across the street, hood pulled low, watching. For a moment, her eyes swept the street, and they landed on me. I saw it, that flicker of recognition, that hesitation, but she didn't say a word. She just tightened her grip on Derek's arm and walked inside. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She knew I was alive, and she wasn't surprised. That night, I sent Derek a message he couldn't ignore. When he came back out of that club, his car was gone, stolen right out from under his nose. When he found it an hour later, parked 3 blocks away, every window was smashed. The leather seats were slashed to ribbons, and carved in the hood in deep, ragged letters was a single word: justice. The next morning, his men started sweeping the streets, kicking down doors, interrogating anyone who so much as looked at them wrong. But they never found me, because I wasn't hiding. I was hunting.
Of course, a man like Derek doesn't get rattled easily. Rage, yes. Violence, always. But fear? That takes time. So I gave him time. I let him think he had control. I let him puff up his chest and act untouchable. And then, one by one, I took it all away. His money, his men, his pride. By the end of the month, Derek wasn't laughing anymore. He was screaming, breaking things, suspecting everyone. And Anna? Anna was fading. The newspaper showed her looking thinner, paler. Her once bright smile was gone. She looked like a ghost draped in designer clothes. And though I told myself she deserved this, part of me, the part that still remembered her tiny hand in mine, ached to pull her out. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until Derek was dust. The breaking point came one night when Derek tried to send a message back. I was in my kitchen when the first shot tore through the window. Glass exploded, wood splintered. I dropped to the floor, rolling behind the counter as bullets chewed up the walls. His men had come to finish the job. But unlike Derek, I knew this house. Every creak, every shadow, every blind spot. I moved like a ghost through the halls, shotgun in hand. By the time it was over, 2 of his men were down, one unconscious, one bleeding but alive enough to crawl away and tell Derek what he'd seen. And what he'd seen was this. I wasn't dead. I wasn't broken. I was coming. After that, the game changed. Derek doubled his guards. He stopped flaunting himself in public. He kept Anna even closer, like she was both a trophy and a shield. But it didn't matter, because I was already inside. I knew his routes, his habits, his weaknesses, and I knew his empire was crumbling. The cops were circling, thanks to the trail I'd fed them. His men were scattering, too afraid to take another bullet for a boss who couldn't protect them. And Anna? Anna was starting to see the cracks. One night, I saw her slip away from him just for a moment, stepping out onto a balcony alone. I almost went to her, almost revealed myself. But then Derek came behind her, sliding an arm around her waist, whispering something that made her flinch. And then I realized she wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was part of him. And that made her my enemy too.
Still, I couldn't shake the thought. Was there anything left of my daughter inside that shell Derek had built around her? I didn't know. But soon I would find out. Because the storm I'd been building was about to break. And when it did, there'd be no more shadows, no more games. Just me and them, and the reckoning they'd earned. The line between predator and prey is razor thin. Derek thought he was the hunter. He thought he'd cornered me on that dark road, thought he and my own daughter had buried me in a twisted wreck of steel. But the truth? That was the night I became something he could never understand. I wasn't prey anymore. I was the storm. And storms don't ask permission. They don't negotiate. They consume. The first strike was loud, purposefully loud. Derek owned a casino on the edge of town, flashy, gaudy, a front for laundering his drug money. I'd been watching it for weeks, learning the rhythms. One night, when the high rollers were inside, when Derek's men were scattered across the floor, I walked straight through the front doors.
The music throbbed. Lights flashed. Cards shuffled. And then came the explosion. I'd planted it in the basement earlier that day, right under the vault. Not enough to kill, not yet, but enough to send a message. The ground shook, lights flickered, screams filled the air. I walked out calmly while everyone else stampeded for the exits. By the time the smoke cleared, Derek's vault was nothing but rubble, millions gone in an instant. And painted across the shattered wall in thick black spray paint were 2 words. I'm back. The news spread like wildfire. The cops called it terrorism. The papers called it gang warfare. But Derek knew. He knew it was me. The very next night, I got my confirmation. As I sat in the shadows across from one of Derek's clubs, I saw him storm outside, Anna on his heels. He was raging, his voice carrying across the street. "Find him!
he roared. "I don't care how! Dig up every corner of this town until you drag him to me!" Anna touched his arm, trying to calm him. "Derek, maybe—" "Shut up!" he snapped. Her face went pale, and she shrank back like a scolded child. My chest twisted at the sight, but I forced myself to remember. She'd chosen him. She'd chosen this. And so, if she stood beside him when the hammer fell, she'd feel it too. The second strike was quieter, surgical. One of Derek's lieutenants, a hulking brute named Mason, ran a drug pipeline through truck shipments. I intercepted one, drove the truck myself right into the impound, left Mason tied up in the back for them to find. By morning, Derek had lost a major artery of his empire. And Mason? He was facing 20 years in prison. The rumor on the street was that Derek had left him to rot. Doubt spreads like a virus, and I was the carrier. Anna became my obsession during these moves. I watched her constantly, not out of nostalgia anymore, but calculation. I needed to know if there was any trace of the girl I raised, any sign she could still be saved. Sometimes, late at night, when she thought no one was watching, I'd see her standing alone, her shoulders slumped, her face hollow. It reminded me of when she was little and scared of the dark. She used to call for me, whispering, "Dad," like it was a prayer. Now she just whispered into the void, and I wondered, was she already too far gone? The third strike was personal. I broke into Derek's penthouse. It wasn't hard. Rich men love their toys, but they rarely think about how fragile they are. While he and Anna were out, I slipped inside. The place reeked of excess, gold fixtures, velvet curtains, bottles of champagne stacked like trophies. I didn't take anything. I destroyed it. Shattered glass, ripped paintings, overturned furniture. And in the center of his pristine marble floor, I left a single photo. A picture of Anna as a child, sitting on my shoulders, both of us laughing. On the back, I'd written, "She was mine before she was yours." When Derek found it, his rage could be heard down the block. But Anna, when she saw it, she froze. She held the photo like it was a lifeline. And for a second, just a second, I saw her walls crack. The retaliation came swift. 3 of Derek's men jumped me outside a gas station. They thought they had the element of surprise. They didn't. By the time the cops arrived, one was unconscious, one was bleeding, and the third was on his knees, begging. I leaned in close, my voice low. "Tell Derek I'm not done. Tell him I won't stop until he's nothing but ash." The man nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. I let him go, because fear spreads faster than blood. But it wasn't just Derek who was unraveling. It was Anna, too. I saw it the night she stumbled out of a dela, makeup smeared, eyes red from crying. She stood on the sidewalk shaking while Derek barked orders into his phone. I followed her at a distance, heart pounding, wanting so badly to step out, to tell her she didn't have to live like this. But then she turned, and our eyes met across the street. Her lips trembled, and for the briefest moment she mouthed a single word, "Dad." Then Derek grabbed her arm, yanking her back inside. And just like that, the moment was gone. I knew then what had to happen. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about liberation. If Anna was going to stand with Derek, she'd fall with him. But if there was still a piece of her worth saving, I'd rip her out of his grasp, even if it meant tearing down the world around them. The final strike was set for Derek's mansion. He was hosting a gathering, politicians, businessmen, all the parasites who fattened themselves on his poison. It was perfect. A chance to cripple him in front of his allies, to show the world that the king had no crown. I slipped in through the service tunnels, the ones his guards never bothered to watch. Inside, laughter echoed off marble walls, glasses clinked, music swelled. I moved like a shadow, placing charges where they hurt the most: the wine cellar, the garage, the office where Derek kept his files. And then, as I crept toward the ballroom, I saw her, Anna, standing beside Derek, her face a mask of beauty and sorrow. She didn't smile, didn't laugh. She just stared at her glass, lost in a prison of her own making. I almost faltered. Almost. But then Derek raised his glass, his booming voice filling the hall. "To family!" he roared. "The ones who stand by us and the ones who die in the dirt." The crowd cheered. Anna flinched, and I pressed the detonator. The first explosion rocked the mansion. Screams erupted as smoke poured through the halls. Guests scattered, tripping over each other in their gowns and suits. Derek spun, barking orders, fury etched into his face. And then his eyes landed on me. Across the chaos, through the smoke and fire, I saw me step into the ballroom, alive, whole. His face twisted in disbelief, then rage. "You," he hissed. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Dad," she whispered. And in that moment, the lines were drawn. Father, daughter, monster. The reckoning had begun.
The mansion burned. Flames licked the curtains. Chandeliers crashed from the ceiling. Smoke coiled like black snakes through gilded halls. And in the center of it all stood Derek. His tuxedo jacket thrown off, his eyes wild, his fists clenched like a man watching his kingdom crumble. Across the ballroom, I stared at him, my body ragged, my breath heavy, but my resolve sharper than ever. Between us, Anna. Her face pale, her eyes darting from me to him like a pendulum caught between two gravities. "Dad?" she whispered again, softer this time. It was the first time she'd called me that in years. But Derek didn't let it breathe. "Don't you dare," he snarled, his hand gripping her arm. "Don't you dare say that to him. He's nothing. He's dead. I buried him." I stepped forward, through the smoke and sparks. "You tried, but men like me don't stay buried, not while men like you are still breathing." The guests scrambled around us, stampeding toward shattered windows and broken doors. But in that ballroom, it was just the three of us. Father, daughter, enemy. Derek shoved Anna aside and stormed toward me, ripping a crowbar from the wreckage. His face glistened with sweat and fury. "You think you can take my empire? You think you can take her?" He swung. The crowbar whistled past my head, shattering a marble column. Sparks rained from the ceiling above us. I countered with a punch to his ribs. He grunted, but barely staggered, rage numbing the pain. We clashed again, metal against flesh, fists against bone. Each blow was thunder, each breath was fire. Years of betrayal, of corruption, of blood, all poured into every strike.
And all the while, Anna screamed, "Stop! Please, stop!" But neither of us heard her, not really, because this wasn't about stopping. This was about ending. He grabbed me by the throat, slamming me into the wall. My vision blurred, stars exploding in my skull. "You were weak. That's why she chose me. That's why she'll always choose me." Rage surged through my veins, hotter than the fire around us. I slammed my forehead into his nose. Bone cracked. Blood spurted. He stumbled back with a howl. "Don't you dare speak for her," I bellowed, seizing a broken chair leg from the floor. I swung it like a war club, smashing into his shoulder, his arm, his face. He reeled but didn't fall. Derek was a monster carved from arrogance and hate. But even monsters bleed. And bleed he did. Anna ran between us suddenly, arms outstretched, tears streaming down her face. "Stop it, both of you!" she screamed. Her voice broke something in me. For a heartbeat, I froze. And in that heartbeat, Derek lunged. The crowbar slammed into my side, knocking the air from my lungs. I dropped to my knees, gasping, fire and agony tearing through my ribs. He loomed over me, sneering. "You were weak, always weak." Anna sobbed, "Derek, stop, please." But Derek only raised the crowbar again, aiming for my skull. "Say goodbye to your old man." I rolled. The crowbar crashed into the marble, sparks flying. I surged upward, grabbing his wrist, twisting hard. The crowbar clattered to the floor. We grappled, raw, brutal, each of us trying to choke the life from the other. My hands around his throat, his fists pounding into my ribs, and Anna, caught in the storm, screaming my name. "Dad!" The word hit me harder than any punch. It fueled me. Strength I didn't know I still had surged through me. I slammed Derek into the burning wall, the flames searing his expensive shirt, his skin blistering. He shrieked, thrashing, but I didn't let go. "You took everything from me," I snarled, my face inches from his. "My life, my peace, my daughter." His eyes bulged, his nails clawing at my arms. "And now," I whispered, "I take it back." With a final roar, I drove him through the burning wall. Wood splintered, fire consumed, and Derek fell silent beneath me. The ballroom collapsed around us. Beams crashed, flames roared, smoke choked the air. I staggered back, chest heaving, hands trembling. Derek's body lay motionless, fire crawling across him like a shroud. Anna stood frozen, eyes wide, lips parted. "Dad!" she whispered again. I turned to her. For a moment, in her face, I saw the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, the one who used to laugh at my dumb jokes, who used to cling to me when thunderstorms shook the house. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd saved her. But then she stepped back. Her eyes hardened, and she shook her head. "You shouldn't have come back," she said, her voice trembling. The words cut deeper than any blade. I wanted to reach out, to beg her to remember who she was, who I was, but there was no time. The ceiling groaned. Fire swallowed the room. I turned and ran. I burst into the night as the mansion collapsed behind me in a thunderous roar. Flames reached for the sky, painting the darkness red. Sirens wailed in the distance. I staggered down the road, every muscle screaming, every breath a knife. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Because if I did, I might see her face again. And I couldn't bear it. The war was over. Derek was gone. His empire would burn with him. But Anna was a wound that would never heal. Maybe one day she'd see the truth. Maybe one day she'd forgive me. Or maybe she'd curse my name until her last breath. Either way, she was my daughter, and I was her father, bound forever, in fire, in blood, in the ruins of the life we once shared.